If you own your home, consider this for a moment. You wake up on an ordinary morning in the same house you've lived in for years, maybe decades. But then you discover something that shouldn't be possible. According to the official records, the house no longer belongs to you. You didn't sell it. You didn't sign any papers. No one forced their way inside. Instead, somewhere in a quiet government office, a document was filed that officially changed the ownership of your property. On paper, the home you worked years to pay off has been transferred to someone else, and you had no idea it happened. And by the time you discover it, the person who filed that paperwork may have already taken out a loan using your house as collateral. This isn't a movie plot. It's called home title theft. And for a growing number of homeowners, it begins exactly the same way, with the quiet discovery that something in the public records has changed. Robert Mitchell was 71 years old when he first heard the term. He had spent most of his life working as an electrician in Phoenix, Arizona. 40 years of early mornings. 40 years of long drives to job sites. 40 years of paychecks slowly turning into something that meant stability. His house. Robert and his wife bought that home in 1986. Back then, the neighborhood was still developing. The house cost just over $90,000. For years, they made mortgage payments that sometimes felt like they would never end. But eventually they did end. 18 years ago, Robert mailed the final payment to the bank. He still remembers that day clearly. The moment the mortgage statement came back stamped paid in full. For the first time in decades, the house truly belonged to them. No bank, no lender, just their name on the deed. Robert believed that meant the house was finally safe. But that belief would eventually prove wrong. The moment everything changed happened almost by accident. Robert's neighbor mentioned something during a casual conversation. The neighbor had been checking property records online because of a tax issue. He joked that it was strange how much information the county kept publicly available. You can look up anyone's house, he said. Robert had never thought about it before. But that evening he sat down at his computer and searched for his address. The county website pulled up the property record, square footage, lot size, tax value, all the details he expected. But one line stopped him cold. The owner's name. It wasn't Robert Mitchell. It was someone he had never heard of. At first, Robert assumed it was a mistake. Government websites sometimes make errors. He refreshed the page. The same name appeared. He tried again. Still the same name. Robert felt something strange in his chest. Not panic yet, just confusion, because the idea that someone else owned his house made no sense. He hadn't sold it. He hadn't signed anything. He hadn't even spoken to a real estate agent in years. Yet the county record clearly showed that the property had been transferred 3 months earlier. The next morning, Robert drove to the county recorder's office. He asked the clerk to print the official property record. The clerk pulled up the file. Everything matched the website. The property had indeed been transferred. A new deed had been filed, and the document listed Robert's name as the signer. Robert stared at the paper because he knew one thing for certain. He had never signed that document. Home title theft works differently than most people imagine. The criminals don't physically take your house. They take something more powerful, the paperwork that proves ownership. In many places, property ownership can be transferred through documents filed with a local recorder or land registry office. Those documents are supposed to be signed by the owner. But in some cases, the offices receiving them are not required to verify the identity of the person submitting the paperwork. That means a fraudster can create a forged deed, file it, and if no one notices immediately, the public record changes. The scammer then becomes the legal owner on paper. But criminals usually aren't interested in living in your house. They want something else, the equity. If the property is paid off or has significant value, a fraudster can use the stolen title to apply for loans. Because to a lender, the paperwork looks legitimate. The house appears to belong to the scammer. The lender approves a home equity loan or line of credit. By the time the real homeowner discovers what happened, the money is already gone, and the house may now be tied to debt that the real owner never authorized. In Robert's case, the fraudster had already moved quickly. The forged deed had transferred the house to a company that appeared to be a small real estate investment group. 2 weeks later, That company used the property as collateral for a loan. The loan amount was $200,000. Robert knew none of this until he sat in the county office staring at those documents. The house he believed was safe had become the centerpiece of someone else's financial scheme. Robert hired a lawyer immediately. The lawyer explained something that surprised him. Property law moves slowly. Undoing fraudulent transfers can take months or even years. During that time, the legal ownership of the property remains disputed, which means lenders, courts, and government agencies all become involved. For Robert, the emotional stress was enormous. Not because someone was trying to move into his house, but because the legal ownership of the property he had paid for decades earlier was suddenly uncertain. Here is why older homeowners are targets. Title theft scams often target older homeowners for a simple reason. Many retirees have homes that are fully paid off. That means large amounts of equity with no mortgage lender actively monitoring the property. To a criminal looking for a target, that type of property looks extremely attractive, especially if the owner rarely checks public records. One of the most dangerous aspects of title theft is how quiet it can be. There is no broken window, no forced door, no police report filed the moment it happens. Instead, the entire process begins with documents, filed quietly, recorded officially, and stored in databases that most homeowners never check. Months can pass before anyone realizes something is wrong. Robert's case eventually went to court. His lawyer demonstrated that the signature on the deed had been forged. The court ruled the transfer invalid, but the process took more than a year. And during that time, Robert lived with the constant fear that his home, the place he and his wife had built their lives around, might no longer legally belong to them. Eventually, the title was restored, but the experience left him with a warning he now shares with everyone he meets. Most homeowners assume that once the mortgage is paid off, their house is completely secure. But ownership today exists not just in memory or paperwork stored in a drawer. It exists in digital records maintained by government offices. Those records can change, and if no one checks them, changes can go unnoticed. If you're watching this video and feeling uncomfortable about how secure your property is, this is what you can do. There are simple steps homeowners can take to protect themselves. The first is awareness. Know that title theft exists. Second, periodically check your local county or land registry website to confirm that your name still appears as the owner of your property. Many counties provide online property searches that take only a few minutes to review. Third, consider signing up for property record alerts if your local government offers them. These alerts notify homeowners if documents are filed against their property. The story of Robert Mitchell is not about fear. It's about awareness. Because in today's digital record systems, the ownership of valuable assets can change quietly if people are not paying attention. And while the vast majority of property records remain accurate and secure, the few cases where fraud occurs can cause enormous damage to the people affected. Finally, if you ever discover a document that you don't recognize connected to your home, contact a real estate attorney immediately. The sooner fraudulent activity is identified, the easier it can be to reverse. Let's talk about the question every homeowner should ask. If you own your home, ask yourself one simple question tonight. When was the last time you checked the official property record for your house? Not the paperwork in your filing cabinet. The public record maintained by your local government. Because that is the record lenders, courts, and buyers rely on. For Robert, the moment of discovery came by accident. A casual conversation with a neighbor led him to check something he had never thought about before. And that small decision revealed a problem that could have cost him everything he worked for. Your home may very well be completely secure, but verifying that security takes only a few minutes. And sometimes the difference between losing something important and protecting it is simply knowing where to look. If you own a home, take a moment tonight and check your county property records online. Make sure your name still appears exactly where it should. Because the people who discover title theft too late often say the same thing. I never thought anyone could steal a house. If this story helped you understand a risk you hadn't considered before, share it with someone you care about. Sometimes the most valuable protection begins with a simple warning. And the next person who needs that warning might be someone close to you.